Announce a topic for this? Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I think one of the big questions and relevant issues to all of us, but especially to yourselves, as you are I guess at a crossroads in your lives. You know, you're ending your school stage and hopefully soon building your own homes and families. So, as Chassidim in general, and particularly Chassidish women like yourselves, today that we are sadly 25 years since Gimel Tammuz, almost 25 years. All of you were born after Gimel Tammuz, am I right? So, sometimes maybe it's a spoken question, maybe it's an unspoken question, is what exactly does the Rebbe mean to us in our lives? What does it mean to be a Chassid today, being that the Rebbe is not here physically, and you can't approach him directly, at least not the way it was before 25 years ago. And how does it impact on your life? Which of course is by extension going to also determine how it impacts Image Hashem when God blesses you with children and family and whoever it is that you're going to have ashpah on and influence. So if you don't have the answers for yourself, you're definitely not going to be able to communicate it or even project it to others without first really coming to terms yourselves. Now, I'm sure each of you have your own, perhaps an answer or somewhat of an answer. I would assume after, 13 years of schooling, would that be correct? At in a Chassidish school, wherever it is that you went to school, either here in Beis or elsewhere, that this was addressed perhaps more than once. But I find, even in our own community, and I include myself as well, when I went to yeshiva, these were not always spoken about in a very direct way, and especially the more controversial elements, more controversial questions about the Rebbe, about Mashiach, and so on, were not really spoken about openly. And if it was, it always usually led to some type of disagreements, as we see today, so much different opinions and extreme opinions about the Rebbe's role in our lives. And so I want to talk about that. I think it's quite relevant. And I'll try to leave at the end of my few words here some time for questions. But I believe this is one of 6-part week, I don't think 6 consecutive weeks. But I'll be coming back another 5 times. I don't think next week I won't be, I think next month, I don't know, the schedule is there. So there'll be room to talk about more, but that's what I want to address. You all agree? Good topic? Or not? So, I remember last year, maybe it was even to some of you, maybe not. The faculty here in Beis Rikvah asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, I don't remember, to come speak to the 12th graders. And they wanted me to speak about college, why they shouldn't go to college. Were any of you there?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
It was your class? Okay, good. Oh, so here you are.
Some of them.
Okay.
They're all in college.
This is the college?
Yeah, these are for college.
Okay. Postgraduate school, right? Correct. So you remember that interesting evening? Or afternoon, I don't remember when it was. I don't know, I don't even know how it works. Are any of you, besides going to seminary, also go to college? Is there such a thing?
Yeah.
It's either you go here or there.
No,
Huh?
you could do both.
You could do both.
And nowadays they work, some of them
So
work.
some of you do both?
Yeah.
Okay. But the point I want to make is I'm not going to go over my talk then. I just want to, since you were all there, or some of you were there,
Wait, what do you think about that? About doing both?
I'm going to talk about that right now. I mean, my point of my conversation here is not about college per se. That's not, but it touches upon it, and I'm invoking that because I remember it was a very interesting experience that I felt at the time. So I told the faculty before I came to speak, I said, it's a little difficult to come speak to 12th graders who've already made their choices, or they're about to make their choice. If you want to talk about this, you should talk about it when they're in 9th grade, or maybe even younger. Okay, but they said, this is what we have, and let's do it. Fine. So if you may recall how I was pretty blunt, and some of the girls didn't like it at all. But I was very intentional and deliberate doing so. I wasn't looking to provoke anybody, but I really wanted to drive a point home. And even afterwards, he said some things that some of the faculty did not like because I challenged them as well. So here's the question that I posed then, if you may recall, and I want to talk about it right now in this context with the Rebbe. It really comes down to one very simple question. Why are we here? Why are you and I were sent by Hashem to this world? That's really the biggest question a person can ask in life. If you answer that question, everything else follows. If you don't have an answer to that question, the rest of your life you're always wondering whether you should be doing what you're doing. Why are we here? Now, the blessing, the good news is that in a world of a Chassidus world, a world with a Rebbe, with a Rabbeim, that's exactly what they came to tell us, why we're here. I can't speak for other Jewish people, including from Jews. Everyone's got their challenges, and I'm not looking to criticize, but I don't think many people in this world, including Jews, including from Jews, really have an answer to this question. In the general sense, everyone will say the same thing. I'm here to do Torah mitzvahs, to prepare my share in the world to come, and to help bring Mashiach. I mean, that's a very general statement, and it's true, but it's nothing unique about any individual. It's not about you, it's about all of us. And that's what the Jewish people have been doing for thousands of years, officially. The question I'm referring to is much more right now in this time, in this place, and you as an individual, what is your calling? What's your mission? So as I said, the blessing here is that's exactly what the Rebbe came to do, to tell us what our mission is. Hashem sends a Rebbe to this world to tell us, because we don't have other way of knowing, what is the shlichus of our time? And what is each of our shlichus, each individual, how can we find and identify our talents, our skills, our unique personality, and everything that makes us tick, how can we direct it to what God wants us to do? And that's really, in a very nutshell, what a Rebbe comes to. Moshe Rabbeinu did it in his time, first Rebbe. He told the Eden what their shlichus is, and what we call Torah. Torah Shebiksav, and we read about it in every parsha. And our Rebbe did it in our generation. And each Rebbe in their respective generation did exactly that. I'm going beyond now the teachings of the Rebbe, how to learn a Rashi, or a Pshat in a Gemara, or a Rambam, or a analysis of a Hasidic text. That's already the details. I'm talking about the overall. And what did the Rebbe say in his first Maimon? It's exactly what he did. He stated, what is the mission of our generation? We called it the Deir HaShvi, is to bring the Shekhinah down below. Just like Moshe did the Deir HaShvi from Avraham Avinu, we're the Deir HaShvi from Alter Rebbe. Each generation has its mission, and ours is to finish the process and finally bring the Guru. This is indisputable, because there's no room for opinion. This is the Rebbe said, it's on tape, it's recorded, it's published, it's edited, and so on. Now, why is it so vital? Because this is like the mission statement of our time, stated by the Rebbe himself. It's not commentary. So what I said then, if you may recall, in that talk, that was my opening statement. I said, why is that's what the Rebbe came to tell us. So for any of us to come and say, I want to do something else, you're entitled. Listen, everybody has free will. We can all do whatever we want. But if we do want to embrace the Rebbe, and we want to embrace his calling to us, his directives to us, you can't ignore what he said. You have to deal with it. Now, again, I'm not here to argue if somebody tells me I don't really accept the Rebbe or I don't accept his directives. That's a whole different discussion, and it's not the scope of what I'm going to be speaking about here. And I will tell you right now, I deal with people all the time that are skeptical and have that question, even Lubavitchers. So I'm not telling you can't have that question. I just say you can't talk about it all in one room at the same time. So if any of you do have that question, and you're entitled to it, you should definitely talk to somebody, because there may be answers that... Now, I know a lot of people will not like to talk about this topic. They'll say, what do you mean, how could you not accept the Rebbe? But I'm open and honest, and I know that people do have such questions, and I'd rather hear the question and address it than ignore it or silence it. I just wanted to throw that into the picture. Now, obviously, I'm a person who made that choice, and I did embrace the Rebbe's calling, and it drives my whole life till this day, from the time when I was 17 years old, or whenever it is that I so-called joined the army. This is what I've been doing, and I feel blessed by it. I feel also it's not for me. It's not a slavery. It's not a form of conformity. I learned to use my talents and skills, and thank God, in the best possible way. Obviously, we all can do better, but I feel blessed that I had this direction. In a way, the Rebbe guiding me personally to find my soul's mission and to actualize it as much as I could. Only thing I don't do is my own laziness or my own resistance. So I speak from personal experience, and at the same time, I am a skeptic by nature. So it's not like I don't have questions, and I have always had questions, and I still have questions. But you make choices in life. You make choices. What are you going to do with your life? Just because you have questions, you don't want to stay on the fence and never do anything because maybe this, maybe that. You second guess yourself, you never get anywhere. So you have to make choices. And now, so to go back to this point, that's where my point there was. So then, okay, a person says, I want to go to college, let's say, to become, I think someone then, one of the girls said to be an interior designer. Is she sitting in this room? I don't know if she ended up doing it or not.
She's in interior design school.
Huh?
So she's sitting in interior design school.
Okay, fine, right. And I remember that, because I remember she pointed that out. So, interior design is beautiful, so is exterior design, so is all design. I have no problem with design. The question is...
I was joking, by the way. Like, I don't know who his brother's talking about.
Okay, it's fine. I understand. Humor is allowed. So, my point is, if the Rebbe calls you into a room and says to you, here's the calling of your life, your mission, use your skills toward that direction, and you say, you know what, I want to go into interior design, or I want to become a doctor or a lawyer, that doesn't take anything away from those professions. They're all good, they all contribute to society. You know, we're not talking about something that's destructive. The question is, your mission or your calling? That's the question. So from my point of view, if we did have a Rebbe, and we do have a Rebbe who we were blessed with, who gave us that guidance, that should be the driving engine. And I remember saying, this is the point I made, I said was, if all your years you went to Beis Rikvah, I said this to the girls, and you don't know this, I wonder what Beis Rikvah accomplished. What exactly did this school accomplish? They could have taught you everything. They could have taught you Historia, and Chumash, and science, and everything else you learned, but they didn't teach you the mission of your life. Afterwards, one of the teachers came over to me and said, you didn't have to put it so sharply. But I actually don't regret saying it, because that's exactly what I feel. And I'm not trying to be an extremist, I'm just really trying to point out when you one day will be mothers and maybe educators and your own influencers of your own communities, what you want to do with the people that come your way, all gently and kindly and lovingly, not in any way ever judgmentally or condescendingly, what you want to do is inspire them to find their calling. It's the greatest gift you can have in life, is to know why you're here. So that, to me, is like the driving purpose of everything. So to go back to a relationship with the Rebbe, I asked the question, what is our relationship with the Rebbe? And we'll talk about Gimel Tammuz in a moment. Is simply that. The Rebbe is sent by God to this generation. So even though you may have physically not met him, your parents did, but he left everything he said in writing or recorded, and he gave us this guidance and direction. Why are we here? And especially in our generation, the challenges that are unique to this time, 2019, the time that we're living right now, and how you can use your skills to the fullest to actualize yourself and in some way fulfilling part of that mission. That is how the best way I can describe why we have a relationship with the Rebbe, why it's so important. Because that's where we get the guidance. And he did it not in some type of just a command, do this, do that. It wasn't just orders. It's all explained in a full, comprehensive way. And if you choose, you can learn and study about it. So when I was in yeshiva, to be very honest, we picked up certain things like this, but no one ever told it to us directly. You know, most of our learning, including the Rebbe's sichos and the Rebbe's directives, was more academic. You know, learning a sikha, understanding it, the questions, the answers, all the commentaries. You know, what you've learned. Some of it is complex, some of it is very deep, esoteric. But that driving point, you know what, this all is part of a message from the leader of our time, someone that God chose to tell us why we're here, was never quite stated that way. That's why I'm stating it so bluntly. Because to me, that is the essence of a connection between a Rebbe and a Chassid. Now, I want to just reiterate, if someone says, I don't feel that connection, I don't feel the Rebbe is that person for me, you're entitled to this question, but you should discuss it with someone. And I'd rather not, as I said, go into detail here, because not all of you may have that question. If all of you do have it, I'll be happy to talk about it, by the way. So that you'll have to decide and let me know. And I will not report you or see this as any type of negative thing, if that's what you want me to talk about. So I'm assuming there is some connection, but you may not have it all articulated in detail. So the first point that I sum up what I said so far was that the connection is based on really just like a Moshe, hearing from Hashem what we're supposed to do, the Rebbe hearing from Hashem what you and I are supposed to do in our lives. What I want to continue here is obviously spell it out in more detail, and I want to first address, of course, the Gimel Tammuz, elephant in the room, big thing. Okay, so many people say this. Fine, everything was fine and good when the Rebbe was here physically, soul inside of a body, Shama B'guf, was bringing almost every Shabbos or every Shabbos. Mincha Ma'ariv, Shachas Mincha Ma'ariv, Chassidim saw him all the time. Came Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah, the works. You can go into Yechidus, you can go to dollars, you had access, you could write to the Rebbe, get answers. Beautiful. And that sounds like a very good system. The Rebbe is actively involved in every person's life, and everyone can access him any time they want. But how about now? Now, it's not just a year after Gimel Tammuz, it's almost 25 years. And as I said, there's a whole generation is born that never saw the Rebbe. The only thing you ever saw is a video, or a picture, or heard an audio recording. And you don't necessarily have that. You never physically were in the presence of the Rebbe. So you get all the answers. Some people say, well, you can find it at the oil. Others say, I don't identify with an oil. I don't even know what to do there. I'll go, Kabbalah sale, fine. They tell me, go there, ask for a blessing on my birthday, or when I get engaged, or whatever it is. But many people say, I don't really relate to it. Others say, why don't you open up Igris? And there's that approach. Some people say, go to 770. 770 is the place where the Rebbe spent so many years teaching, advising, davening, learning, and so on. So there's all the different so-called, I don't say tricks, but different methods. But we all know it doesn't come close to a viable, living reality, as I said, as it was back in the good days. And I was right in the thick of things, to be honest. I often wonder what would have been if I had been born 25 years later, or 5 years later for that matter, and I had never seen it. I don't know. Would I have been able to connect? It's a good question. So this is much more complicated than it was, as I said, 30 years ago. Now, just rest assured, the Yetzer Hara was not created after Gimel Tammuz. There were big Yetzer Haras before Gimel Tammuz. I can be a personal witness to that. So people had challenges then too. It's not like everybody who saw the Rebbe and suddenly they drank the Kool-Aid and everything was all clear. There's plenty of confusion then too. It was just a little easier because you physically had the Rebbe. But there are many people who had challenges with that. The Rebbe taught people things they didn't necessarily listen to. Everybody had their own self-interest involved. So don't think it was all, what's it called? Roses and what are they called? And what? It was all perfect then. It wasn't. Only thing is, like they say, when a strong light is shining, you don't see the cracks in the wall. When the light is dimmed, you suddenly see the cracks. So there, the strong light was the Rebbe shining, so in a way it lifted everybody on his wings, and we more or less ignored some of the issues. Today, in a way, we're standing on our own feet. And the Rebbe being here is more behind the scenes. It's not glaring light quite the same way. So in many ways, this is much more a reality check than it was then. Then many people, you come to Fabrengen, you come to Simchas Torah, you come to dollars, whatever, it was easy. The Rebbe did all the work. All you had to do was bask in his glory. It was a very easy job. Today, it's not that way at all. Today, it really comes down to each individual making a choice, because you don't have those, what Chassidus calls Giluyim. So, how do we address that? To me, it comes down to one simple thing. I'll share with you a personal episode of my own life, which may really answer this question. When I was 20 years old, the Rebbe had a heart attack. And that was the year Tovshin Lamed Ches, Shmini Atzeres, HaKofis, the night of HaKofis, middle of HaKofis, the Rebbe had a severe heart attack. He went back to his room. Later we found out that night the Rebbe had what they call a killer heart attack. Massive. That can kill somebody. So it was very dangerous times. Not everybody was aware of it at the time, but afterwards we found out. And then the Rebbe miraculously recovered. He didn't just recover, he came back even stronger than before. And I mean that literally. If a farbrengen was 3 hours, let's say from 1:30 to 4:30 on a Shabbos, before the heart attack, it was from 1:30 to 6:30. Almost double after the heart attack. Can you imagine? A man's 77 years old, wasn't young when the heart attack happened, and literally doubled his output. And I saw this with my own eyes. I'm not here to glorify the miracle, I'm just making the point. So I had my own crisis. I had my own, we'll call it Gimel Tammuz crisis, right there and then. Because I was a bocher in 770. I was working in the Rebbe's sichos. I was involved very closely with the Rebbe's work. And yet, suddenly, everything stopped. The farbrengen stopped. There was no farbrengen that Simchas Torah. The Rebbe did speak after Yom Tov. But still, the Rebbe was in his room. More or less, the way relative to what was going on, the Rebbe was like literally like a clock. Everything was consistent, persistent. Suddenly, everything changed. And though it wasn't spoken out loud, but I, in my own skeptical mind, thought to myself, what's going to be here? If God forbid the Rebbe wants to take the Rebbe back, where does it leave us all? Where does it leave us all? We all left hanging. And it was hard for me to imagine that the Rebbe, a responsible leader, wouldn't just leave people hanging. And I really was concerned with this deeply. It was like, because I was myself I was 20 years old, I wasn't yet made all the big decisions in my life. And I'll tell you something I read at the time that really answered my dilemma. A story with Rav Shmuel Munkus, who was a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And he was, once he came to visit the Alter Rebbe, it was middle of the night. That same night, some of the soldiers of the Tsar came to arrest the Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe had a hiding place where he hid. So when they came knocking on the door, he went to the hiding place. They came in. This is how the story goes. And they asked the Rebbetzin, the Alter Rebbe's Rebbetzin, where is her husband? She says she doesn't know. They slapped her. They actually knocked out a tooth. That's the story. The Alter Rebbe then, they left. The Alter Rebbe came out of his hiding place. And a few minutes later, Rav Shmuel Munkus is knocking on the window, which of course frightened the Alter Rebbe and his Rebbetzin again. They see it, Shmuel Munkus, the Alter Rebbe lets him in. And he says to Rav Shmuel Munkus, you also come at night? Meaning you also come to terrify us. Because who comes at night? All the negative forces. So he said, I didn't know by the Rebbe there's a night. That was his answer. I didn't know the Rebbe has something to be afraid of. And then the Alter Rebbe asked him, should I cooperate and allow myself to be arrested? And Rav Shmuel Munkus answered the following answer. You have to hear this. This is very, very sharp. He said to the Alter Rebbe, Mamonavshach, either or. If you're a Rebbe, a true Rebbe, you have nothing to be afraid of. You let yourself be arrested, Hashem will protect you. And if you're not the true Rebbe, this is what he said. It's not published. They took out this line. But he said, you deserve a bullet in your head for taking away the pleasure of Elam Haza, of this world, from so many Chassidim. That's what Rav Shmuel said. Munkus said to the Alter Rebbe. This story had a very big impact on me at the time, because I said to myself, okay, you know what, grow up. If you believe the Rebbe is real and true, it's not always going to work exactly as you see it, It's very nice to be part of the whole scene when everything's going well. But if there's a setback, you can't take an attitude, I'm only here in the good times, as soon as it's difficult, I'm out of here. That's not how a soldier works. That's not how a committed person is. You're committed all the way. Grow up and mature. And here's your test. The Rebbe now is not in full strength. There are many questions and doubts. Are you in or you're out? And you have to make a decision. If the Rebbe is real, he's real no matter what. And if he's not real even when things seem good. And I made my choice. But interestingly, for me, I never looked back. I still have the question. I remember the story very well from my own life. So when Gimel Tammuz came around, it didn't have quite the impact. I was saddened, like everybody was, by the Rebbe's passing, or however you want to define it. But I did not have a crisis of faith. Let's put it that way, because I already had my crisis of faith and I had my answer. So I say to you, and this is, I go back now, I know I tell it through a story, but this is really actually a profound concept in Chassidus. A Rebbe is a nitzchi, a Rebbe is eternal, not because he's a nice guy and he's charismatic. It's the same way because a Torah is eternal. It's connected to Hashem. And just like we don't see Hashem, and though Hashem lives on in our lives, the same thing, Hashem does His mysterious ways. I don't understand why Gimel Tammuz happened, but I have no question that whatever made the Rebbe eternal beforehand continues to live. Just like the Torah continues to live. So even though Moshe Rabbeinu is not here physically, we still say Moshe Rabbeinu. We still Torah's Moshe. We talk about Moshe every day, every time we learn the Torah. So a Rebbe lives on because he's not made of physical being. The Alter Rebbe says that a tzaddik, chayet tzaddik, is not chayim psarim. I'm sure you've learned this. In Simach of Zion, in Ageres HaKedesh, the 4th section of Tanya, says these words: the life of a tzaddik is not life of flesh and blood. Our lives are flesh and blood. And we survive on what? On food, drink, oxygen. That's what the Alter Rebbe writes. The life of a tzaddik, however, is chayim ruchnim. And what is his sustenance? He says, Ava, Yira, and Amunah. Love, awe, and faith in God. That feeds him. And he's chayim ruchnim. This is true not only when the Rebbe is physically not here, it's true even when he's physically here. And when you come to realize that he represents the truths of the Torah and the truths of what Hashem wants, then that does not die. How could you say the truth of God dies? The physical vehicle may not be here, but the meaning and the spirit and the mission that the Rebbe defined in Tafshin Yud Aleph and throughout the years, why would that in any way be weakened? And if it is weakened, then maybe it was never strong in the first place. So if it's eternal, it's eternal. If it's not, it's not. So I have no problem when someone says, I don't believe in anything. Fine. But to believe only for the things that are convenient, to me that was always seems very disingenuous, very dishonest in a way. Because if it's true, I'll take questions at the end, so save your questions. I will take them. Are we time-wise? What time? We have till 12:30, right? Okay. So, and this is a vital, vital point. I was on CNN and Larry King 2 nights after Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz was Motzei Shabbos, Sunday. Tuesday night, I was, that same year, almost 25 years ago, I was interviewed on national television. And it was not easy because it was literally mamish 2 days afterward. And Larry King asked me this question. And this is for a secular Goyish world, not for Chassidim. He says, I understand that Chassidim, the Rebbe's followers, his disciples, his shluchim, are saddened by this loss. But why are you shocked? I see so many people, he said, are shocked. Why are you shocked? Saddened, I understand. He's your father, he's your Rebbe, he's your everything. But everybody dies. So what's the shock exactly? He's not the first person that's passed on. It's a question he posed to me. It was live television, I had to answer on the spot without knowing that he was going to ask me that. So I answered the following, and I had to say it in a way that was also relevant to people who are listening who may not even have a clue what a Rebbe is in the first place. As I said, I wasn't speaking to Chassidim, to a captive audience. So I answered. I said, a Rebbe embodies Torah. The Torah is immortal. It survived everything. It survived the Holocaust, the pogroms, the Inquisition, the Crusaders, every challenge. Egypt, Persia, Babylon, Rome. Everything has passed on. But the Torah traveled through history with us, the Jewish people, without being affected. A Rebbe embodies that immortality. So when mortality touches immortality, it's not just sad, it's also shocking. That was what I said. And I stand by that. I said it there in a language that's more fitting that everybody could relate to. But this is a fundamental principle that even in our own community needs to be articulated. A Rebbe is not a Rebbe because he has blue eyes and is charismatic and knows how to inspire people. That's all true, but that's not what defines him. A Rebbe is a Rebbe because he's a piece of God. He's God's man in this world. Ish Elokim. I know we're all Chelek Elokim in Mal Mamish, but by us it's maybe hidden, and it's not our only voice. We also have enough Shabbats. But a Rebbe lives by what God tells him to do. So it's not about his greatness. Someone says the Rebbe is great. That's not the truth. God is great, and being the Rebbe, a messenger of God, that's why he's great. And the Rebbe himself would always remind us of that. So the fact that some people have cult worship of the Rebbe as a human being, it's actually quite immature and not really true. I'm not going to tell a child who feels the Rebbe is like that to stop them, but the true mature approach is that the Rebbe is a Ish Elikim. He's a divine person who's fulfilling God's wishes in this world without distraction, without ego, without other agendas, without money, materialism that drives so many people, in a pure way, and tells us what Hashem wants. It's really as straightforward as that. If it's indeed that, that never dies. The physical manifestation, maybe the voice, the arms and legs may not be here, but the presence of that message is here absolutely. Now, if the Rebbe did not leave a word of Torah, did not write anything or speak, you could say, well, it's just a distant memory. But the Rebbe doesn't live on his videos, he lives on in his words. Just like, you all know the expression, what's the first word of the Aseres HaDibros? Anoichi. You know the acronym? Ano nafshis ksavis yahavis. I have imbued or instilled myself in these words. That's what Hashem says. Anoichi, ani nafshis ksavis yahavis. Yahavis is, I've given myself in these words. That Tzaddik does exactly the same. He doesn't give us a picture of himself or his signature. There was a bacher that I knew, not a Lubavitch, came and brought the Rebbe some gift. It was a manuscript of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Rebbe said to him, thank you for this gift. Since you brought me something so precious to me, I'd like to give you something that you value. What would you like? And he says, he was an American boy. I'd like a photo of the Rebbe, an autographed picture of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said to him, why that? So he said, because that's what, I have that on my wall. I have different celebrities. I have football stars and Hollywood stars. And I want a picture of the Rebbe with his signature. That's... So the Rebbe says, if you want a connection with me, it's not through the picture and the signature. If you want a connection with me, go across the street and go pick up any books for free that I've written or spoken. Learn what I learn. Do what I do, and you're connected with me. So we live in a very superficial world where people collect baseball cards, or they have Hollywood heroes, or superheroes, or cartoon heroes, or whatever it is, sports heroes. But in the Ruchnisdik world, in a true world, our heroes are not defined by their pictures or by their images, even by their physical presence. They're defined by the legacy and by the message and the inspiration they leave us. Is it harder today to get inspired by the Rebbe? Probably it is. I'm not going to be honest, because it's much easier standing in front of the Rebbe. You see him, he speaks to you. It's easier. But is it impossible? Absolutely not. And I see hundreds, if not even thousands of people who never saw the Rebbe and are inspired completely by him. And not even people growing up in Lubavitch homes. I meet people, my classes and different places I go, that the message touched them. Last night I gave a talk to people who never saw the Rebbe. They didn't even know what Yiddishkeit was. But certain messages of the Rebbe, they live by. Now, of course, girls like yourselves, who grew up with it and went through the school, for sure, have much more resources than the average person. So in that sense, that connection in no way is severed. And it's actually not even that controversial if you think about it. You haven't heard anything from me that I think anybody will disagree with. If I started saying now that the Rebbe is here physically in a body, just we can't see him, he's behind the closet somewhere. Some people say that, some people say it's ridiculous. If I started saying, here the Rebbe is Mashiach, and we just are waiting for him to reveal himself, even though that may be true, but what are you supposed to do with that? What does it even mean? Where is this Rebbe? He's not here. What I'm trying to talk about is not all these slogans and lines. I'm talking about what it means personally for each one of us. I have no question that if you apply yourself, you can find that connection. You may need a mashpia, not just maybe, you should have a mashpia, someone you can trust, that you can talk to about it, because we can't always figure everything out ourselves, but we have all the access. I will say to you without even hesitation, I say if the Rebbe is real, I only say if for the skeptic. Just like Shmuel Munka said, if you're a real Rebbe, nothing's going to happen. And if you're not, what he said, if the Rebbe is a real Rebbe, there's no way that he abandoned his flock. There's no way he didn't leave us directives. If you trusted your father or mother, and for whatever reason they had to go on a long trip, but they told you, I'm giving you everything you need to live and be successful, and you believe in them, then you say, you know what, even if I don't know where I find the answer, but they promised me that I can find the answer somewhere. So there's no question that the Rebbe gave us everything we need to have to not just survive, but to thrive, to find our calling, to find our unique way of fulfilling our mission in this world. And to me, that's the essence of what our chassid and connection is today. Is it harder? It may be harder. But you know something? It's much more real today than it was 40 years ago or 30 years ago. Because there, a lot of people just came on board because the party was nice. You know, everybody comes to a good party. Today, if you make this choice, it's coming from your inner kishkas, because it's a choice you have to make. It's not an easy choice always. I'm not suggesting it's difficult to do, but it's not the same, it doesn't have the same fireworks and all the glamour and glitz that we had back then. So to me, the most important thing of all is each of you finding that connection. You find that connection your whole life. It changes your whole way of looking at things. Now, I may have said some things that are obvious, that you already heard or know, and maybe not, but I'm trying to put it in words that you can do something with it, to absorb it. And so the real next step really comes down to one simple thing. You all have a unique personality. There's nobody in this room that does not have something unique about them. Very often that uniqueness is covered up because of our parents demanding things, the school demanding things, others putting pressure. You have to identify, either with yourself or with friends or with a good mentor or a mashpia, what makes you really tick. What are your strengths? What do you like? Some people are very artistic. Some people are very analytical. Some people are very good with people. Some people are very good not with people, but very good with the back end. Everybody has their, I just gave a few examples, there's hundreds of others. I actually am working on something now, and I'd be happy to share it with you, almost like a personality test that helps you identify what type of person you are. Because if you don't identify your strengths and what you're good at, you could end up spending half your life doing something you're not really even good at, when you have so many other strengths that you should have been pursuing. And then the next step is, how do you connect those strengths that you have to the calling that the Rebbe gave us? In general, yes, to bring Mashiach. In general, to some way finish the job that thousands of years of history, of Jewish history, has been leading us to. How do you take those strengths and connect them to your calling? That is the key. Now, when you go to college, university, good one, even the best, that's exactly what they teach you, but they don't teach you a mission, because they don't know what God's mission is for you. They teach you want to be a doctor and contribute to society through that, here's how you do it. You want to be a lawyer, you want to be an accountant, you want to be a computer programmer. Well, we also have, as someone pointed out here, we also have a college. We also have a university, except it's a university that teaches us to be soul doctors, not medical doctors. Soul doctors means that whoever you're going to come in contact with, you will know how to speak with them. That you will have the skills that we were trained by the Rebbe, how to speak to somebody, how to speak to them about their spirituality, about their connection to their purpose, about their connection to God. And ultimately, that's actualized through Torah and mitzvahs. So it's really coming down to, how do you take the Torah and mitzvahs and speak about it in a way that helps people grow, that helps people actualize themselves, that helps people find happiness in sometimes a very sad world. So that's the challenge you have right now. How do you find your skills and match it to some form of a shlichus? Now, when I say shlichus, I don't necessarily mean a card-carrying member in the conventional sense. There's many ways to be a shliach. It means that your soul came down to this world to help make this world a better place, to help others, not just to serve your own needs. That's really what it comes down to. There's 7.5 billion people on this planet. 99.9% are here to serve their own needs. I'm not saying they don't, in the process, also help others, but they help others because it also helps them. And we were taught that we came down here not just to hang out and to have fun, but to actually bring light to the world. And each of us has our unique way of doing so. Maybe the next time I'm here, we can talk more about how you identify in your own personal life. Because of time limits, I'm going to stop with this and take some questions or comments. And based on that, maybe that will define our next time we come together. And I assume I'm coming back to this group, I think, because that would be the...
Yeah.
Okay, because I know there's different classes. So, we have 5 minutes. Go ahead. Anybody, any questions? Yeah.
Sometimes it's not like...
And don't be bashful, please. Everything is on the table.
Sometimes it's not an all or nothing situation. Like, there's somebody that can know my mission is I want to be like a good mother to my children, And if I go to college, get this degree, it can just be something more helpful. But it's not my first priority. I know, it's just to help my family.
Look, I didn't come here to talk about, criticize those of you going to college, or that was not my point here. Look, everything is Ashgacha Pratis. Whatever it is you're doing now, you have to find a way to channel that toward your mission. So even if one's taking classes in college or wherever, online or whatever it may be, there's always ways to channel it. If you weren't going anywhere and you asked me what's the best thing to do, so then I would talk to you one-on-one to see where you're at. So absolutely. Let me just say something about mothering. What you said is a very good statement. I've never been a mother, so I can't talk about a mother, but I've observed mothers, and I have a mother myself. Mothering, true mothering takes a lot of creativity if you really want to shape your children into something. It's not just you're there to feed them and to bathe them and to put them to sleep. Children are literally like unshaped, what the Chassidus called like a warm ball of wax, and you have the ability to shape this wax into something that will be the best they can be. In Rahman al-Islam today we have all the horror stories of unhealthy parents and dysfunctional parents. We see the damage that's done. But there's the other good side, is that it has a lot of talent and skill. If I'm talking about not minimal parenting, I'm talking about maximum parenting. Now, there's no question that the Rebbe wanted women of our time not just to be mothers and wives. He made it clear. He wanted them to be activists in community. He always said to every shliach and shlucha, you're equal partners. The Rebbe established in the Shei. There's 100 ways that the Rebbe made it clear that he also didn't want us to lose focus. Because even a man, even the husband, his real focus should be building a good family. He goes to work. For what purpose? Not to work as an end in itself. To bring the money necessary to build a good home and family. So it's all about really the focus and understanding that just as you bring up your own children, you also bring up the children in your community. There are people who are your students. There are people that you maybe have a class in your house once a month. Or you have something going on that you initiate, where you're always trying to lift the standard and bring more light into your community. Now, if you have particular professional skills, whether it's psychological ones, therapeutic ones, or artistic ones, by all means, there's so many great ways to use that toward the bigger mission. So my point is that even if we're doing jobs that make money, and they're there really to just help us pay the bills, those jobs themselves could also serve deeper shlichus, the people you meet there, and also the things you know in that particular job. Every job, doesn't matter what it is, always has a deeper so-called spiritual part to it. If you need more, let me explain that more, I can't, but maybe you know what I'm talking about. Everything has deeper lessons and so on. That's my response to that. Any other questions? Okay, so everyone have a very good day.
Thank you.
You'll be welcome.